Hello and welcome to Clay to Canopy, the show where I attempt to make just about everything from the ground up. In this episode, I was attempting to put together a tutorial on how to make cookies that you can actually shape from a dough that would be more sculptural, and you can shape them into little objects and then bake them. And as you can see, this is the aftermath of my disastrous cookie endeavor. They were supposed to be three-dimensional, but when I baked them, they completely flattened out. And I was going to go try a different recipe and restart this, but I decided to just kind of run with it, and here's why. This video I am shooting is specifically for my high school class, and given the situation, this is a very odd way of us to be going about a ceramics class. I kind of felt like at a time like this, I needed to do something that was gonna get my students to kind of pause and take a break and really just mentally step outside of the entire current situation that's happening right now. And what better way to do that is than to bake. Alright, we're going to do this old school completely by hand. First thing I'm going to do is cream together my sugar and my butter. So I have a 1/4 cup of sugar and a 1/2 cup of my butter. I'm using unsalted butter. Whenever I use unsalted butter, I always throw in a little pinch of salt, and you can do that either now or during the flour stage. Just a little pinch. And then I'm going to just use my hands. This is already pre-softened butter. I left it out on the counter for several hours so that it would get soft. And I'm using brown sugar, but you don't have to use brown sugar. You can basically use any kind of sugar that you would like. Making sure that I'm getting as smooth as I can. Alright, smooth enough for me. Now I'm going to go ahead and add my cup of flour. I'm just kind of pinching to get that flour in. It'll begin to form a dough, and at that point you can really start kneading it. Okay, you don't want to overwork this dough because you're going to be using it to sculpt. So the more I handle it, the softer this butter is going to get, and that's not really what you want to happen. So from this point, I'm actually just going to work in 2 colors. So I'm going to split this in 2, set aside 1 chunk for me to dye later, and I'm going to go and grab some rubber gloves because I don't want to do this with the food coloring with my hands, otherwise it'll get stained and get all over the place. I went ahead and I put in 11 drops of this green food coloring into the first batch, and it just gave it a very mild green coloring. And now I'm going to go and put some purple, and these are neon food coloring that I had found at the grocery store. I have plain colored ones as well. I'm going to start with 8 on the purple. It's a little bit of a darker color already. You don't have to actually dye the batch of dough. You could just go in and paint on the food coloring onto the pieces after you sculpt them. If you are going to use the food coloring more like paints, make sure you're using brand new brushes, or you could use a toothpick, whatever it is. Make sure it's super clean. If you do end up eating these, you want to make sure that you're not getting anybody sick. It's like not even purple, it's like this weird pink looking. Alright, let's add more. I added another 5. That brings us up to 13 total. Now at this point, I'm going to grab some powdered sugar so that I can start working directly onto this countertop without having to worry about it sticking. Alright, it's basically ready to go to start molding into little tiny sculptures. Well, Mine look absolutely terrible. I probably should have let the dough set up a little bit more, but I'm sure they taste just fine. Have a good look around, y'all. Alright, this is the reason why my cookies were a disaster today. I have been spending the last 4 days basically in this giant mess of a studio right now, working on as much content as I possibly could to try and get some tutorials up for all of my classes. And I am teaching 5 classes right now, so for me it's a little bit frantic here because there's a lot of demos that I had planned on doing for my classes that I now have to convert to doing for video purposes. Yeah, things go wrong, things happen. Sometimes you set out to make something that you expect to turn out one way and it's a complete disaster. You know, that's part of being an artist. Most of the time, 80% of the stuff we make is probably an epic fail before we land on the 20% that actually works. We just have to embrace the situation, and whatever it ends up will be, and you kind of just got to make the most of what's going on. I challenge my high school class to use the recipe that I will be posting to make some version of the worst possible cookies you could make, and please just go into the kitchen, have a good time, play with the dough, use it like a clay material, mentally kind of step away from what's going on right now. But I do ask, pretty please do not make a disaster out of your parents' kitchen. I do not want angry emails, so please clean up after yourselves and do not operate any kind of kitchen equipment without getting permission from your parents. Thank you for joining me today. Hope to see you soon.